Hello and welcome to episode 288 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDadFF. We got a great show. Last week was hashtag Smash running back class this year. This week, we're going to talk about the wide receivers. And I think a lot of people are really in on the running backs. We're going to tell you which wide receivers that we're totally in on, guys that we're buying. And, Snoog, I'm at the gym, right? And I go in, got my pre-workout, I get in there, and my headphone batteries die. And that's usually a killer for me, right? That's usually just like, I can't do this. I was so pumped for my workout. I was so pumped to talk 2025 rookies. I don't even need to bump my heavy metal in the background. I don't need to bump, my Kendrick Lamar in the background. I just need to talk 2025 rookies. So let's do it. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good. I mean, Texans absolutely dog walked the Chargers, so that's a good start to the weekend. And then my Commanders came out and took care of business in a game-winning drive. My boy Austin turned up at the end, put his team on the back, and brought the team in the situation to win the game. So I'm very excited about that. Every team, I have a future out there for Ohio State to win the national championship. They clutched up. They're going to steamroll Notre Dame hopefully next week. So for some reason, all the teams I wanted to win this week won, so I'm feeling pretty good going into the next week. But I'm mostly excited, even though I want to keep watching these running backs because it's the best running back class that I've watched personally since 2019. But the wide receivers, I mean, this is a class that is very similar to 2019, in my opinion, where there's a lot of guys at the top, but there's like 5-6 guys, maybe like a seventh guy that you could see being like very solid. And then the rest, it's just a nightmare. Like it's just an absolute apocalypse. So I can't wait to talk about this, kind of see who there is and who will be values for us and when to just start taking running backs. Because there's going to be a time where it's probably the mid-second round and it's just going to be a running back run because the wideouts are so weak. So let's jump into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really what I've gathered most out of it is a top-heavy class. Guys, right now, this past week was the biggest support of the Patreon we've ever seen. It's patreon.com/SmashAccept to get into our premium Discord with all of our chats. Snoog has it on his timeline where, we're showing all the different things in the Discord. There's chat with Dad, chat with Snoog, all of our rankings, all of our buys, all of our sells. Community where you guys get to talk shop with each other, rebuild rooms, everything you're looking for, and some of the comments in our testimonials, NH Papa said, joined about 6 weeks ago, upgraded immediately to VIP. He goes, great community, appreciate Dad and Snoog's expertise. Thanks. Dion Raw says, appreciate the responsiveness from you two gents along with the community you guys have built. Working jobs and being a parent and still finding time to answer all these questions. You guys provide great content. As a champ in 4 leagues and second-year Dynasty player, made it to second round in 7 leagues. Injuries derailed me, but still great shape thanks to you guys. And I love reading those kind of things because everybody can say they have a Discord, right? And I know there's a lot of analysts out there that have them. But ours is honestly one of the greatest communities that I've ever been a part of because guys actually care what you're talking about. They're talking shop 24/7. They want to know about these rookies. They want to go into these areas, and they're starting up leagues. Every single day, they're starting up leagues with. If you're a degenerate and you're playing in a league where you're like, my guys disappear till May, get in here and start talking shop with these guys, and you'll get into a league of like 12 guys just like yourself. And Snoog, you and I know that those are the most fun ones. Those are the ones where right now they're trying to make trades to get up to get the 102 so they can draft Tetairoa McMillan. Those are those guys that are like listening to all the other podcasts, listening to us, trying to make headway and make trades now because if you're just sitting there right now, you're just allowing your Dynasty team to stay stagnant.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the best part about our Discord is we're just trying to build. Like we're just trying to build this community around everybody. So you have that place where you can go find leagues whenever you want that you feel safe about. You can go talk to people about trades. Most Discords and a lot of the Patreons out there is just pay for the service and you just get whatever they put out for content or something. And that we try to do everything. So we do that. We do all the rankings. We update everything positionally. We help with startups. We help with trades. We help you get you orphan teams if you want to take some orphans on. We try to do everything there. And I mean, there's like 520 people in there right now, and it doesn't sleep. Like people say Las Vegas doesn't sleep. The Smash Accept Discord doesn't sleep. So check it out. Jump in there. I mean, if you don't like it, you can just cancel. It's not that big of a deal. We're building potential in there.
We were already talking about it. So this class, I broke out of tiers, and we're going to do a tier show a little bit later on YouTube, just trying to, like we did last week. Shout out to Brock Dynasty. Make sure you guys are following him on Twitter. Did a phenomenal edit. If you guys haven't seen that, really going to set you guys up for the running back class. We're going to do the same with the wide receivers. I have one guy in our S tier. We call that our smash tier, and that's Tet McMillan. Tet McMillan, 6'5", 212. A lot of the comps are going to say Drake London plus or Mike Evans, maybe a little bit faster Mike Evans. I mean, that's the kind of ceiling that we're looking at from this guy. But the floor is really high. I mean, he's someone that has great positional versatility. Snoog, you see him win as an X, and then you see him win as a power slot. And I think with his frame and his route running ability at 6'5", like this is the guy that's going to go top 10 in the NFL draft. Everyone's like, oh, well, if Cam Ward goes 1 and if Shedeur Sanders goes 2, it's like, I don't care. Tet McMillan's my 102. I'm not straying away from this because in years past, I've tended to do that. I've said, you know what? My 101 is Junty. I'm taking him no matter what. And then 102 is a wide receiver. And then what happened in years past was we moved Jamar Chase back. We moved CeeDee Lamb back. We moved Garrett Wilson back. And we're like trying to force quarterbacks. No, not happening this year. Tet McMillan's the 102. I can't see a scenario where I don't take him with my 102 or trade out.
I think the only chance is if like a Quinshad Judkins or Caleb Johnson or one of these running backs goes in the first round with Junty, which probably won't happen. But if that happened, I think you can make I think if like the Chargers took like a running back in round 1 in the 20s, like, and it was like Judkins or one of these guys, you could argue it. But like, I'm a firm believer that the Panthers are going to draft Tet McMillan, and he's in the worst division in football.
Give me the Patriots.
Defensively, though, the Panthers have the worst, like the Bucks defense, the Saints, it's horrible defenses. So I just think Bryce and Tet with Dave Canales would just go to work right away. Or Patriots, yes. But I mean, Tet's a guy with back-to-back seasons with over 1,300 plus yards. He had 2.8 plus yards per out run in both seasons. True freshman breakout. Dominant at the catch point, like very physical, dominant at the catch point, has a crazy catch radius. He's not going to be a guy that consistently wins his route right off the line of scrimmage. Like, he's not a Garrett Wilson. He's not one of these smaller, nimble guys, but he is one of those bigger, fast, athletic 6'5", T. Higgins, Drake London types that he has a decent – he doesn't have as complete of a release as like a London T. Higgins, in my opinion, but he's better than them at the catch point, I think. And I think he's a little bit better downfield or on that same like range. He's better downfield than London, but he's on that same like T. Higgins range where he's fast. He's got that long speed. I think he's going to be a really good prospect, very high floor, like you said. I mean, all the metrics are great. Like, there's nothing to really hate about him besides maybe like, he's just a traditional Alpha X, which it is kind of like a dying breed position. Like, I mean, look at Marv. Like, I know Marv still had a really good rookie year, but like, some of these teams don't know how to utilize their best player on offense, especially at wideout, and use them in the slot and outside. Like, even if they're a slot guy like Tet McMillan, like look at the Texans, they get Nigo involved in the screens, the quick slant, stuff like that. You just want to see Tet go to an offense like that where he would be utilized like that, and I think that would be the Panthers. So that's my favorite fit. Panthers at 7 or 8. I think that's right where he goes. I have him graded as a top 10 prospect, probably in that 10 to 12 range, but 8 to the Panthers would definitely be the 102 for me.
Yeah, and he's like he's probably going to test in that 4 or 5 range. So I mean, if you see his jumping ability is off the charts, his pure athleticism is good. It's not phenomenal. Like, I would say it's good to great, but it's not elite.
Yeah.
But the way he wins, he's a student of the game, obviously. Like, he's someone that, gets in and out of breaks really well. He finds soft spots in the zone. He has fantastic hands. He's someone that shows the ability to dominate with his technique. And when you got a guy with back-to-back 1,300 yards seasons like that, 10 touchdowns, 8 touchdowns, really good in the red zone, good at 50-50 balls. He's one of the best guys I've seen in the last couple of years being able to high point the ball. Like, and we've had that in the past where you say, well, this guy's a contested catch guy. And I think a lot of times we blur those words between contested catch and not being able to separate and get open. They are very different. Like, we talk about the N'Keal Harrys of the world and the guys in the past that just didn't separate and had good contested catch. He's phenomenal contested catches, and he can separate, because of that fluidity, because of his technique, because of the way that he is just super pro ready. And I feel like he is as sure as you can get to a non-bust type candidate. Like, he's someone that like in comparison to last year, I mean, I don't have him on the same level as Neighbors. Coming out, I have him on the same level as Brian Thomas Jr. when he's coming out. You know, Brian Thomas Jr. balled out, but I think he's still in that same area of Ladd, Brian Thomas Jr. I think I would take him above Worthy last year, but I feel like that's kind of in that area where he would be at. And I think in one quarterback leagues, you're going to get him at 102, and in Superflex, you're going to get him at 102. But there's a lot of leagues where people are going to bump up Cam Ward. They're going to bump up Shedeur Sanders. Don't get too aggressive, because if you're sitting there at the 102 and you see the 103 and 104 have one quarterback, make a small trade, move back from 102 to 103. And I think you can even do that and get a 1-2 swap or a mid 25 second, and you're going to get your guy, because you have to kind of look to see what's going to happen there. I think Tet McMillan for me is a set it and forget it 102. The next guy, I think there's three guys in that next tier, that A tier. And just like we did with the running backs, I'm trying to give you an idea of what we think of them. I have them as top 12 to 15 wide receiver upside. I think I don't know if they will get to that point, Snoog. Like when we talked about it last year, we said Malik and Marv were top 12 right off the bat, right? And Brian Thomas Jr. and Ladd and Worthy had top 12 upside. Now, 4 of those guys got into the top 12. I think this class is going to be similar. I mean, when you look at Luther Burden, you look at Emeka Egbuka, and you look at Travis Hunter, you got 3 guys that have, if Travis Hunter's strictly a wide receiver, you have 3 guys that could be top 12 to 15 dynasty wide receivers. And in this class, I think you're going to get those guys in picks 1-7 to 110, because I think we're going to see a lot of teams that are running back needy because of this draft, that they're going to move up Judkins. They're going to move up Hampton. They're going to move up Henderson. They're going to move up a lot of guys. I could see one of these guys, probably Egbuka, possibly fall into the second round of Superflex drafts, but all 3 of these should go round 1 in the NFL draft.
As far as high floor prospects, I think Emeka Egbuka has the highest floor in this class at the wide receiver position. I think he's like guaranteed going to be some type of Josh Downs, type of Tyler Lockett type of player. But I think he has the upside and ceiling of like an Amon-Ra St. Brown light, a Jackson Smith and Jigba, a Terry McLaurin. Like I think right now, Emeka Egbuka, I mean, I just started watching the wide receivers big time. I've watched Luther Bird. I've watched Emeka Egbuka on TV all the time for the past few years. I've watched a lot of Emeka's 2021 tape, or 2022 and 2023. 2022, playing alongside Marvin Harris Jr., went toe-to-toe with him, basically producing him at the same level as him, being a guy that was a safe player, 70-plus receptions, 1,100 yards, 3.01 yards per out run alongside Marv, which is incredible. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba only played a little bit that year, but he's my wide receiver 2 in this class right now, just based off Luther did have a really bad junior year, and there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, the quarterback play was terrible. Missouri's offense was just brutal. He was their only guy there. He had an elite sophomore season, but Emeka just bounced back for me. He had a great year this year, playing alongside Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate. So Emeka Egbuka never was the clear one in his offense, because he was always playing with a Garrett Wilson, a Chris Olave, a Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith. Like he never had the room to himself. And if he did, he probably would have had 1,400 to 1,500 yards. But I think he's like a couple catches and a 60 yards away from breaking the all-time Ohio State record in the receiving category. So he's special to me, very high floor. I have him graded as a top 20 prospect. 6 foot, 205 pounds, that big power slot, but he can win everywhere. Just a good route runner, fundamentally sound player, very high upside and high floor prospect, which is why he's my wide receiver 2. But sell us on Luther Burden, who would be my 3. And then we'll talk about Travis Hunter and kind of his venture and what he's going to be like in the NFL.
I'm still with you with Egbuka. A lot of people don't realize he's probably going to run in the 4.3s. Like he is, he's a technician at his speed, super quick in and out of routes, but he's got long speed too. Like he's going to run in that maybe mid to high. Like they've projected 4.30, but I think
4.4, 4.39.
At Ohio State, they had him at 4.3. So I mean, like there might have gotten a little bit of a bit of a bump just because they're there. But I think what you look at when you look at LSU wide receivers and Ohio State wide receivers, right, is that your Ohio State wide receiver is going to be very pro ready. He's going to be someone that has a set understanding of spatial awareness when working against zone. He's going to be somebody that understands the game and someone that's going to be productive day one. I love that you said Amon-Ra St. Brown light, because that's my comp. Like I love the upside of this guy. And I think it's one of those things, just like Amon-Ra, where you're going to see his best games are in the NFL. Like once he gets to the NFL, he gets the right system. This is someone that's pro ready. That's probably the safest of the three out of this group. I think Egbuka also might have the highest ceiling out of this group, but I think Luther Burden, you look at what he did in 2023, he was phenomenal. He was up there in a lot of people. You and I still had Tet as one. A lot of people had Luther Burden as their wide receiver one of what would be the 2025 class. I mean, 5'11", he's someone that's 208 pounds. We saw as maybe like a Debo light type of wide receiver, the way that he, with his yards after the catch were unbelievable. Like he was someone that was a yak monster in space, runs a 4.41, someone that in the right system, Snoog, would thrive. Like if you replace him in San Francisco where Debo would be, you put him in a McDaniels offense, you put him in an offense where they're going to use him on the bubble screens, they use him on the quick slants, they use him a little bit for, in the run game. You put him in a system where it's like they don't get creative like Philadelphia, which that's not where he's going to go. And I'm just pissed off at the way the Eagles play calling is. But like you look at some of these systems and the play calling so vanilla, but a creative offensive coordinator, Luther Burden absolutely has top 12 upside. And I saw a lot of people say, well, he's just like Jaden Reed. I mean, he's Jaden Reed on a boatload of steroids. Like you can say that. And but Green Bay did not get creative enough to get him the ball. You saw him yesterday. He looked good, but they were not getting him the ball enough. I think Burden needs the system where Egbuka and Tet are safe and secure.
Yeah, DJ Moore, Jaden Reed were my comps for Luther Burden. But if you just look at their best seasons between Tet, McMillan, Luther Burden, and Emeka Egbuka, Luther's sophomore season was like truly elite. And that's why people had him graded out as a blue chip prospect going into this year. So going into his junior season. I mean, he had 120 targets, 86 receptions, 91.0 PFF grade, which was the highest amongst these three guys. He had 8.4 yards after catch per reception. So it's just showing how dominant he is after the catch with the ball in his hands. 1,200 plus yards, 9 plus touchdowns, 3.29 yards per route run, which was the highest amongst these three as well. So analytically and his metrics, that sophomore season at Missouri in the SEC was very special. Like it's not something to shy away from. But he had a dramatic drop off in 2024. Like he like barely had 600 yards. He did have 8 touchdowns. The offense was touchdowns 8 plus touchdowns in 3 seasons. I just think Emeka has a higher floor and is more versatile and more like complete to fit any scheme in the NFL. I think Luther needs like that San Fran, that offense that gets his players out in space and gets them involved in the screen game, or like how Kansas City uses Rashee Rice. That's how you would use like a Luther Burden. Emeka slides right in. I love the Texans landing spot for Emeka. I mean, with Tank Dell's injury, he's going to be done for basically the whole next year. Diggs injury. You got to bring in a guy when you run that many wide receiver 2 and 3 sets. You have no one. It's Nico, and that's it right now. So I could see them bringing in like a Luther or an Emeka Egbuka, both guys that could dominate in space. They'd be perfect players alongside of Nico Collins too, and they both fit the Texans scheme. So that's kind of where I'm at with those two guys. They're rock solid wide receiver ones. I think if this running back class wasn't so good and deep, you'd be looking at Luther and Emeka in that like 106 to 107-ish range, like confidently. If they get first round draft capital, you're probably going to get them in that 108 to 111 range, I would say. But I'm going to be targeting Emeka especially everywhere. So let's jump into Travis Hunter. I personally have no clue what he's going to do. I want to act like I know. All I know is I've watched him play wide receiver, and I see so much Garrett Wilson and Jerry Jude, just such a freak athlete, unbelievable catch radius, unbelievable hands. The production's off the charts. Like he was another one, the only guy there in Colorado to be the guy. So like if he wasn't open, Shedeur was force feeding him the ball and he was still catching it. Like his tape, his short area ability. He's got crazy burst, insane release. He's got the best release off the line of scrimmage in this class. Like, he is such a freak athlete. But, Dad, if he plays cornerback and drafted as a cornerback, but plays a little wide out, he's going to be a landmine in rookie drafts. Like, I don't want him if he's going to be like a hybrid. If he plays full-time wide out, he's probably going to be 102 or 103 for me, for sure.
He's got unbelievable football IQ, and plus added with Dion. He's the most fast twitch, quick off the line, understanding of both sides of the ball that I've clearly ever seen. I mean, he's something that just doesn't exist. Like, he belongs as his top 5 NFL pick. A lot of times I see him go 102, 103 in mocks. Now, in Superflex, okay, here's the deal. This is kind of how I look at it. If you are playing IDP, absolutely smash him at 102, maybe even 101 if your format is very heavy IDP. If you're playing like the rest of us do, like a majority of us do, just standard Dynasty, if he comes out and they say he's going to be play both sides, which is what most teams are going to do with him, I cannot see taking him over the other 2 wide receivers in this tier. I still have him over the Tre Harris, the Elik Ayomanor, I still have him over those guys, but I don't think I would take him before, say, the 109. You know, like, I mean, I would rather have all 5 of the big running backs. You know, I might even prefer Singleton if he comes out and goes round 2. You know, like, I think that's the tricky part is, I'm probably going to, if he plays both ways, I'm probably going to come out with 0 shares. You know, it's like Jameson Williams. I liked coming out, but I didn't own a single share because I was worried about certain things. Yeah. And then I started buying him afterwards. And I think it's going to be wait and see with Travis Hunter. I think what's really nice about this wide receiver class, Snoog, is there's no blur for me right now. Like, the one, Tet is separated from everybody. I look at, in 2023, this was wild. Just to put it in perspective, there were only 5 wide receivers to have 100+ targets, 80+ receptions, 10+ touchdowns, 400 yak, 2.8 yards per route run. It was Marv, Malik, Troy Franklin, which, let's be honest, in college he was elite, just not into the pros.
He was a stud.
And Tet. So, I mean, Tet has just been just on another level. But then I look at the other 3 and I see them separated so much higher because I look at those guys and I say, you know what? These guys here have top 12 upside. I have tier B then we get into, and I think there's 4 guys, but I think they all have top 24 upside, right? I don't think any of them could ever crack into the top 12. I don't envision them cracking into the top 15. I don't likely see top 18, but I could see one maybe getting in to the top 24. And I think that's really what you got to look at is once we get out of round 1 of your Superflex draft and you start looking at these wide receivers versus running backs, I mean, you're going to have Cam Scatterbo there. You're going to have Dylan Sampson. You're going to have some running backs that are going to give you immediate production. These wide receivers are going to be a little bit more landing spot dependent after the big 4. What is that pretty accurate with what you've seen too? I mean, I think that next tier, you and I like Tre Harris, Ayomanor, Tez Johnson, Isiah Bond. I think we like guys in this range, but there is a vast range of outcomes for all of them.
Yeah, I think Tez Johnson, Tre Harris are definitely the 5 and 6 for me in this class. I have Tre Harris 5. I think they're the best, both power 4, big parts of their offense in year 4 and year 5. I mean, they're both 5th-year declares, but they both have that versatile skill set that fits the NFL today. Tre Harris was on pace for like 100+ receptions, 1,700 yards, and 20 touchdowns. Like, if he never got hurt, he would be talked about as a consensus top 15 draft pick right now, like literally just because of the production he had. So I'm tempted to almost bump him up, but like, I just want to see how his draft stock plays out. But he averaged 5+ yards per route run, which is absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, right now, B tier, it's just Tre Harris and Tez Johnson for me. And then if you bump down to C tier, we got those guys you're talking about, like Ayomanor, Isiah Bond, Jaden Higgins, Jaylen Royal, like those guys that are all, I mean, I looked at a lot of the metrics and the analytics on Jaden Higgins, Jaylen Royals, Ayomanor. They were pretty solid, like across the board on a lot of things, like yards per team pass attempt, yards per outrun, all those metrics that kind of lead to predictive success in the NFL. They stood out pretty well to me. So they're like making up that C tier with like throw in Bond and Restrepo in there because they'll probably go in the day 2 range. But I think we're diving into that like 2022 draft class range where after like that big 5 to 6 guys with like Pickens, Olave, Jameson Williams, Garrett Wilson, London, you get into that like Christian Watson, Sky Moore, Wan'Dale Robinson, John Mechie, like that tier of guys is like what we're talking about now. Like the Jaden Higgins, the Ayomanor, these Isiah Bond, Restrepo. So there's probably going to be a couple of those guys that go in day 2, especially with how the NFL views wide receiver now and a lot of the wide receiver injuries this year. It's going to come down to like who goes where. Like I really think that that's going to be the predictive indicator for success for us is like, okay, Ayomanor goes to the Chargers, right? And he's playing kind of like that slot area phase where he's playing downfield in that Godwin type role, kind of stretching the field with Ladd, I think would be a phenomenal landing spot. But there's not that many good landing spots left. Like there's so many good wideouts in the NFL right now, which is why I think it crushes a weak class like this after like the top 5 to 6 guys. But there's like, I could only come up with 12 guys, like literally.
Yeah.
Like this class was bad, like very bad after the top like 6 guys.
And that's what it is. It's a little bit top heavy. I like Tre Harris a lot, like what you said, 5.15. Like he has had 5.15 yards per route run. You look at 7.7 yards after the catch per reception. So he has a tremendous upside. I think he, like you said, could jump into that A tier. It's going to be very important to see where they go. I love Ayomanor. I really do. I think he has really reliable hands. He's going to win as an elite level separator, someone that with the ball in his hands is someone that I'm going to own a ton of shares of because I think he's somebody that's going to get round 2 draft capital. I see a lot of people putting him in the round 1 mock area. Again, someone that I think really is going to rise up boards. Talk to me a little bit about Isiah Bond because you've watched more Texas than anybody with Worthy and, with Adonai Mitchell last year. How does he stack up in comparison to the other 2, because Worthy flashed a little bit. I think Adonai Mitchell probably had some of the best tape to production ratio I've ever seen, but just because Anthony Richardson was so bad, like we just didn't see it happen. But how does Bond compare to the 2? And he's someone that I see that has very easy separation, but what do you see at the next level?
Yeah, I think we're going to get a discount on him because of the injury that he was playing through this year. I mean, there's Ryan Wingo there, who's a 5-star absolute stud freshman prospect, stealing a lot of the thunder from him. Gunnar Helm, who's one of my favorite tight ends in this class, just an absolute stud as well. There was a lot of mouths to feed, even though it didn't really seem like that. Matthew Golden is a guy that kind of operates as that like dynamic playmaker, kind of like that Luther Burden role where it's like a yak guy who can win downfield, win across the middle. There was a lot of mouths to feed. I think they kind of tried to rest Bond as best they could and use a little less of him. But when I went to the Texas game in Florida in person, he was great. Like he had a couple crazy yak plays. And, he just was always playing in crowded rooms, I think was his biggest issue. Like Texas, Bama. He had a decent sophomore year at Bama. His Texas year this year was good. He started off great. Like he was their guy for the first couple of games, but he reminds me a lot of Wan'Dale Robinson. Like I think he could have that type of role, like be a very target hog, like slot guy, like a Josh Downs light, that Wan'Dale Robinson type role in an offense. I mean, they're going to look at him, the NFL, and say, okay, we got a guy that came from Bama, played at Texas, like played at all these elite Power 5 schools. He's got the route running. He's that 4 to 5-star recruit. Like he's going to be that type of guy that gets the draft capital kind of based on what he's established as a player rather than his production. Like if you look at Waddle's production coming out of Bama, he had a ridiculous year that was cut very short because of an injury. Like I think he was like 600 something yards or something, like pacing crazy numbers the year Smitty won the Heisman. But Waddle never had like the world's best production, and DK Metcalf never had like the best production. I'm not saying Isiah Bond is one of those guys, but just being in that consistent SEC top team that's making it far, more scouts get eyes on you. They get to see your route running. Like Bond has very good route running, and he's quick, and he's got that good release. So honestly, Wan'Dale Robinson's my comp for him, another guy that came from the SEC in Kentucky. I think he's going to go day 2. Like, I think like that round 3 range is going to be where a lot of these guys go. It reminds me a lot of the 2023 running back class where it was like Bijan and Gibbs went, and then it was like just Charbonnet round 1. And then it was like a bunch of players in round 3 and 4. I think that's how this wide receiver class is going to be. Not that the 2023 running back class wasn't nasty. It was absolutely stacked. But that's just the way I think that because of the landscape and the way it was then, and like the teams weren't valuing running backs high then, I think that's how the wide receiver position is going to be treated this year. Like it's going to be Tet, Luther, Emeka, if Hunter plays wide out in that first round range, and then it's gonna be like that second, third round range. You probably get 1 or 2 guys in the second round, maybe 3, and then a bunch on early day 3 and late day 2. He'll probably fall into that range with like Iowa State's Jaden Higgins, who's a guy that analytically comes out and checks nice. I mean, he's a guy 6'4", 200 plus pounds, kind of like that DJ Chark type player that can win downfield, decent release off the line of scrimmage, good production. It's a good class. You know, Jaylen Royal is a guy we've been talking about behind scenes. He's like that Rashee Rice, like that G5 guy who has crazy athleticism, great player after the catch, explosive, good production, good yards per out run numbers, good yards after catch per reception numbers. Like stands out very good. So right now he's my wide receiver 7 in this class as of today. I got to rewatch through everybody, and when I get all 22 film that I'm waiting on for all these guys, I'll have updated answers. But as of today, Jaylen Royal was someone that made me like, okay, this guy can play. Like I was excited to watch him.
Yeah, I have him at 10. I have him slightly behind Xavier Restrepo. Deep threat guy that's like back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. But I mean, I think that's where we start to get to. We're starting to get out of that B tier. We're starting to get into that C tier where you're looking at, unlike the running backs where we're talking about our C tier is like a guy that has NFL starter capability. This C tier, I'm looking at as more of a complementary wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 in a lot of systems. You know what I mean? Like depending where they go, you know, they're going to be NFL starters, but they're not going to be anything crazy special. This is kind of what I was looking at when I was going through there. There's other guys in the class, Jaden Higgins, Torrey Horton, you know, Savion Williams, which is just, he's an interesting one, you know, because you look at him, led all wide receivers with 43 missed tackles. He's almost like a wide receiver running back hybrid. You should be interesting. A lot of people then are just going to throw out the Laviska Shenault, which was, you know, a failed experiment who went way up in drafts. I think he's going to end up kind of moving to that area. Ty Felton, there's going to be a lot of wide receivers. We're just going to probably try to project too early in dynasty drafts like we do every year at the end of the second round, where you were taking Malachi Corley, you were taking Jermaine Burton, you were taking Luke McCaffrey, right? And you passed on guys like Bucky Irving, which is crazy to think at this point, but people were passing on them for him. You were passing up a Braylon Allen. You were passing up guys like that, where the running backs in this class are not just 5'6" elite, but it's deep. So when you get to that second round, it should be absolutely littered with running backs. You know, you're going to get the early second, you're going to get an elite running back, or Warren's likely going to go in the first, but you're going to see Loveland fall into the second round, which is a fantastic tight end. You're going to see, you know, some people are going to try to push Jalen Moreau way up there because he's probably going to get drafted in the first round. You're going to see, you know, you're a big fan of Dart. You know, there's a lot of guys. The second round might not be wide receiver heavy, but it's going to be a deep second round again, I think, Snoog is. And if you're savvy, you're going to take the running backs over the wide receivers, because the wide receivers in this range do not hit the same way, or they do not hit as early. But that's kind of how I'm looking at my Superflex drafts right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the tight end class is very, very good, just like the running back class. I mean, you look at, we'll dive into a tight end show soon when we do tight end week, but if you just look at Warren, Loveland, Gunnar Helm, Harold Fannin Jr., like those 4 alone are very good tight ends in my opinion. Like I think they're guys that are going to be day 2 picks, all of them, or at least 1 or 2 going round 1 probably.
Warren's going to go round 1, I think.
Yeah, Warren's going to go round 1, but I think like those are guys that can fill out a second round and tight end premium good. Jackson Dart, some of these guys that fall into that range that people aren't super high on right now. And then the wideouts, like maybe I don't think Emeka or Luther can get there. I think they're going to be mid to late first picks, but like Ayomanor gets good draft capital. You get him like 208 or 209, and like a lot of the running backs are gone. Like there's going to be a time when we know, like, when do you start taking running backs? When do you start taking tight ends over some of these weaker wideouts and quarterbacks, especially? But as of today, it's like all the focus is on this running back class. So there will be some good values at other positions for sure.
Well, let's talk about that real quick, because I put on my early top 12, and in the Discord I have my top 24. So if you guys are looking into that next area, you know, we give you quite a bit on Twitter, but we try to keep some of that stuff for home. So I mean, the way I look at it right now is Snoog, Ashton Junty's in a tier by himself. He's the 101. There's no debate. I have seen some really bad trades. I've seen Jaden Reed in the 103 for the 101. And I'm like,
yeah,
dude,
you're
gonna hate yourself. I've seen the 102 and the 202. No, it needs to be, you got to treat the 101 right now like it's 3 firsts. You have to treat him as if you're trading Bijan Robinson. Not saying he's going to be Bijan Robinson, but that's the kind of, if he goes to Dallas or the Chargers, no, he's not going to go to the Chargers, but if he goes to Dallas inside the top 12, you're going to look at this as the second coming of Emmitt Smith. Like, you're going to draft him like you drafted Bijan Robinson. Don't trade him for less.
Yeah. I've been getting a lot of questions about, like, what do I trade Junty for? I need a running back. I'm literally like, go offer it for Bijan or Gibbs. Like, literally, like, I still don't think there's a world, even if he goes to Dallas, that he's above Bijan or Gibbs for me, just because I just think they're in perfect landing spots. They're already superstars. Like, they're already the best of the best.
But
I think he's going to be like, I think he's going to be the clear guy right behind those two. Like, and he could maybe get into the tier with them, especially if he goes to like the Cowboys or like the Chargers or one of these teams that they want to utilize him as a bell cow right away. But like we said, it always comes down to that. Like, no one thought Gibbs was on the same level as Bijan, and look what happened. So it always just comes down to that.
Tet's in a tier of his own for me at 102. Then 103, 104 right now, I don't want anything to do with them, but it's Shedeur and Cam Ward. Like, let's just be honest, for what's going to happen in your rookie draft, that's where they're going to go.
I can't get behind them, I don't think.
I'm saying it's where they're going to go. You know, last year we had this talk with Jaden Daniels, and you were like, Dad, he doesn't belong up there. It's just the quarterbacks. It's just history.
Drake May's better.
That's not true. Only 3 rookie quarterbacks in history have had 3+ touchdowns without a turnover in I forget what the other thing was, like throwing over 20 passes. It's Daniels all 3 times. So he is him. But then you look at the next tier is very interesting, right? Because I think I have 3 and 4 in a tier of their own, but I don't really want to be in that area. I do think they will be quarterbacks, but 5 through 12 is very fluid. I think they're going to separate, but I mean, you know, Caleb Johnson, Quinshon Judkins, Amarian Hampton, Luther Burden, Emeka Egbuka, Travis Hunter, Travion Henderson, Nick Singleton. I mean, they're all 5 through 12 is very fluid, you know, and I think it's going to change a lot. But I have a lot of people right now trying to trade from 9 to 5. And I'm like, just don't do that right now. Just don't do that right now, because
it's going to take up. That's going to be all running backs. Like, that's right. The way I'm looking at it right now in my head is like the mid to late first round is going to be all running backs, and Emeka, Tyler Warren, and Luther Burden for me. I think that's how it's going to go. But I can promise you, I will not own a single Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders share. It's not even that I don't love them. It's not even that I hate them or I don't like them at all. I liked Shedeur, and like he's my QB1 in this class. I just don't think that they're worth taking that. Like, I'm taking that pick and I'm turning it into like adding for Drake May, adding for Caleb Williams, adding for like a Bo Nix, adding for Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence. Like, I'm trying to turn that pick into one of those guys plus.
Today in the Discord, I went and I put the top guy in every part of the class just to see where I thought they would be, you know, and I have Tetairoa McMillan right now, day 1, I have as the wide receiver 13, there, right behind Drake London. I think he's borderline wide receiver 1, day 1. I have Ashton Junty as my running back 3, day 1. I think he's above Saquon Barkley, but below the big 2. I look at Tyler Warren, and I have him right now. This is going to seem a little crazy, but with the way the tight end landscape is, arguably in that tight end 6 to 7 range, you know, where you got Bowers, McBride, Laporta, Hawkinson, Kittle, but I think he falls right after there because I'd rather have Warren than Njoku, Kraft, Kincaid, Andrews, or Jonnu right now. And I think he has that kind of ceiling. The quarterbacks are where I really struggle, right? Is like, all right, I'd rather have Kyler. I'd rather have Brock. I'd rather have Baker. I'd rather have Goff. I'd rather have Tua. I'd rather have Trevor. And now I'm like, wait a second. Like Shedeur Sanders is more like my quarterback 20, where I start to, look at, but they're not worth the 103 is what I'm saying. And so it's going to check down, honestly, that these guys are going to go top 5. I think both of them, Ward and Sanders, do. And we're going to have to just play that round. Do what I've done in the past is I got mocked for this. You and I know there was a thing where multiple leagues, I traded the 102 or the 103 plus a future first to get from what was Anthony Richardson up to Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. And at the time you could do that. So let it marinate. Watch Shedeur Sanders go to the Raiders after Deion goes to the Raiders. They move up there. All of a sudden, people start getting some hype. And then you trade Shedeur Sanders in your first, and you get Drake May, and then you win, and you're just happy, right? Because you don't have to take those guys, but you have to understand that those guys will have the value. So, again, talking about wide receivers, it's wide receiver week. Running back week was crazy. Make sure you guys check those out. What we're saying, this class, very top heavy. You want to get Tet, especially if you're in your one quarterback right now, you want to move up to 102. I don't want to do it in Superflex that much right now, but in one quarterback leagues, I am doing what I can to move up from 5, 6, 7, 8 up to 2. And I do think there is a late first separation in there. I don't think you have to do it because the running backs are going to be so heavy. You could easily see 3 through 6 all being running backs. So any more takes on the wide receiver class? This is going to be a fun week. Make sure you guys check us out. Patreon.com/SmashAccept. We are absolutely cooking in there. Guys are talking shop 24/7. We are going to have our Smash Accept 17 invitations, which is going to be really cool. I missed out on Smash 10. I'm in the other 16. I won't miss this one. It's a lot of fun. Guys are picking up orphans. Guys are picking up startups. In February, right now I have my top 48 Superflex. In the next week, I plan on having my top 200 so you guys can get help with your startup drafts. We have all the different principles of, do you want to try to 1-year punt? Do you want to try to do a productive struggle? Do you want to try to do, a consolidated punt like that we've worked on? Do you want to do an all-in format? We have different levels, different tiers where Snoog and I will help you with all that kind of stuff. So, we're excited to chop it up. We're excited to talk rookies. And this is our favorite time of year. So make sure you guys subscribe to YouTube. Make sure you guys check out the Patreon. And thanks again for tuning in. Enjoy the process.